Hey, what's up, Logos American History students? Welcome back. It is Tuesday, May 26th, day after Memorial Day, day 42 of our e-learning. I hope you all had a good, long Memorial Day weekend. Got to spend some time relaxing with friends and loved ones, but also keeping a safe social distance. Hopefully you weren't one of those people that we all saw on the news at Lake of the Ozarks, and if you were, stay away from me. Um, but no, we're still keeping our social distance. We're still doing this e-learning thing. We got a couple more weeks left in the term, so let's get right on to the blackboard. Remember, we are talking about the 1960s and all the different movements of the 1960s. And today is one of my favorite movements of the 1960s. That is the hippies, the counterculture, as they were called. And the hippies and the counterculture. This was, it was young people. It was baby boomers. Remember the baby boomers? We talked about them. The baby boomers, as they became teenagers and young adults, began to reject the society that their parents and their grandparents had built. And they had, some good reasons, some valid reasons for rejecting it. They rejected the war and the violence and the capitalism of American society. They wanted to, embrace, more free culture and peaceful culture and loving culture and, mind expansion, drug culture, that kind of thing. So there was good and bad. But as always, we have a couple of assignments related to that. If we go under topics, as always, we see in the 1960s, we are on chapter 23, section 3. If we click on the download for that, we see the counterculture. And, on the first page of this section, which is a pretty short section, we see the contrast of the typical 1950s man in his, gray flannel suit and the hippie of the 1960s, which is really a tradition, which is just a rejection of that traditional style, right? And we see this in the way they dress, we see this in the way they act, we see this in the art that is produced in the 1960s, visual art, performance art, in particular music. The music of the 1960s, in my opinion, is the best music ever made, ever, right? And that's just my opinion, but a lot of people share that opinion. The Beatles, you ever heard of them? They were the entire 1960s. First Beatles album came out, 1961. Last Beatles album came out in 1969, 1970. And then the Beatles broke up. So the whole 1960s was the decade of the Beatles. And that was just one band, right? We had Jimi Hendrix, we had, so The Who, Janis Joplin, The Grateful Dead, just the list goes on and on and on. And a lot of these bands performed at something known as Woodstock, which was a major festival concert that happened in 1969. But yeah, so, again, the 1960s and the counterculture were all about color and fun and just rejecting the norms of society. So it was a pretty exciting, interesting time. But, again, it was also controversial. Like any other movement, there were people who said, I don't like these people. I don't think what they're trying to do to America is right. And so you have some questions to answer about that, but we also have a question today that is related to that. Question of the day, if we go back into assignments, there's our assignment, chapter 23, section 3. If we click on that, we'll see the 5 questions. There's the download again. There's the Google Forms submission if you like doing that. What was the counterculture? What new attitudes towards sexual activity and drugs were promoted by the counterculture? Ooh, we're talking about sex and drugs. But, again, everyone has a different opinion about those things. Good, bad, ugly, indifferent. And that's what the question of the day is getting at. Question of the day, if we click on that link for question of the day, we see what, in your opinion, were positive effects the hippies and the counterculture had on culture and society? What, in your opinion, were negative effects that the hippies and counterculture had on culture and society? Right? There's a short video here that I've embedded for you to watch to kind of get caught up on the hippies. But just like I was saying, what this is going to show you is that the 1950s was all about conformity, right? Everybody just being good and, you know, following their roles. Men worked, women stayed home, took care of the kitchen. The 60s were a total rejection of that, man. Tie-dye, fun colors, dancing, swingers, right? Weird. Kind of weirdos, right? But also promoting peace and love. What's wrong with that, right? Turn on, tune in, drop out. Timothy Leary. Yeah, man. It's hippies, right?
The long hair, the stoner speech patterns, the peace symbols, and the flower power.
I love the colors. I love the music. I love hippies. I think they're really cool. But I'll admit that, drugs are bad, right? We should try to avoid them. There's a lot of negative effects from people, misusing and abusing drugs. And a lot of these hippies and counterculture people had to deal with that. Free love and sex, right? Oh yeah, sounds great until, all the problems with, unplanned pregnancies and STDs and just all that other ugliness. So, like I said, positive, negative. I want to know what your opinion is, and I'll fix that typo, opinion. Let me know, answer the questions, and if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow. Peace.